Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome to the Law of Self-Defense. I had the wrong slide up there for a moment, but welcome aboard. Make yourselves comfortable. This is, of course, the Law of Self-Defense show, and I am Attorney Andrew Branca for Law of Self-Defense. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. That is greatly appreciated. So we have some interesting stuff to talk about today. One is a homeowner fighting off a bunch of apparent car thieves, and down in Clayton County, Georgia, which is just south of. Sorry, you Rumble folks, you're out of luck. I just got an error message from Rumble. Rumble is getting too hard to work with, folks. So if you're on Rumble, ask them to get their act in gear, because it's getting to be too much of a hassle for me to deal with. But today's show is going to focus on this homeowner in Clayton County, Georgia, just south of Atlanta, who drove off a bunch of car thieves with a fusillade of gunfire. And certainly a brave guy, but he did almost everything wrong, both legally and tactically. So we'll step through that. We have video, of course, courtesy of the local news. So hopefully that will be informative. Wow, Evil Bunny, $50 super chat. That is early in the game for a sizable super chat. Thank you very much. Says, for the next motorcycle trip, let me know if you hit San Diego. I was so close to San Diego just a couple months ago. I was in Long Beach, Ocean County, and Santa Monica, California. But we'll see when I get back, surely. I do have trips. I'm contemplating one out to see Nick Rekieta out in wherever he is, Minnesota, I guess, and maybe up to Montana to see my buddy Will Parker, who's here in the comments as a mod under the name Freddie Merck. So, Will, I'm trying to see if I can figure out a way to clear up some time to write up and see you. Will lives in the beautiful part of Montana, right up by the Canadian border, Glacier National Park area. Also, he's a great self-defense instructor. So if you're up in that neck of the woods, I would give Will Parker and Will, just put your URL in the comments. I always forget what the acronym is for you, but I would definitely encourage you to contact Will for self-defense instruction. Okay, so this homeowner in Georgia is what we're going to talk about today. Today's content, however, before I dive into the substance, is, of course, sponsored. And today it's sponsored by no less than Law of Self-Defense itself, particularly our series of 100% free webinars that teach you how to be hard to convict. These are roughly 2 hours in length, these webinars. We do a bunch of myth busting of common self-defense law myths. We explain the 5 elements of self-defense, kind of a quick overview, all of that. And we explain to you how to make yourself hard to convict in these hard to convict webinars. Again, they don't cost a penny. They're 100% free, but you do have to sign up to get a seat. And because we have limited seats for each of these webinars, and you can do that again for free at hardtoconvict.com, hardtoconvict.com. So if you'd like a free webinar on self-defense law, that would be the place for you to go. Okay, bring me back up. So what do we have to talk about today? We have this homeowner in Clayton County, just south of Atlanta. He becomes aware because of images on his home security camera. It's a Ring camera type of system, apparently, of some young men crossing his front lawn and then approaching his vehicle, almost certainly up to no good. And the homeowner arms himself to be prepared to defend himself, his home, his property, and all the good things in life from these poorly acting young men. Now, there's no racial dynamic here, not that it should matter, but that's the nation we live in at the moment. The homeowner is a black male, and the young men who are apparently up to no good also appear to be black men. So no racial dynamic. That's good. We don't have to worry about that in this particular instance, but there's a lot wrong that happens in the course of this event. Now, I'm going to play you the video from the news in just a moment. Before I do, I just want to remind everybody that if you'd like to ask a question and expect a response from me during this live show, it needs to be in the form of a super chat. Folks, that's particularly the case when I'm sharing video with you, like I am here, video involving violence or victims or gunshots or firearms, 100% guaranteed YouTube is going to demonetize this show Thanos style. So this is completely revenue neutral for me. Negative, really, if you consider the waste of time monetarily, unless you folks make some kind of super chat contribution. Also, if you're not yet subscribed, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not yet subscribed, I would ask you to please, if that subscribe button is red, please bang it hard, good and hard, until it's gray. Click that bell so you have a hope of getting notifications. Click that thumbs like up, and if you could put something in the comments, even if it's just your city and state, that would be greatly appreciated, because it helps fool the YouTube algorithm into sharing our content more broadly. As you might imagine, YouTube is not particularly fond of our content here at Law of Self-Defense, because we show people defending themselves, and YouTube, like most leftists, doesn't like self-help. They want you to be dependent upon daddy government for your help. I'm checking to see if we have the video showing properly on our members channel, and it looks like we do. All right, and we got a bunch of members in the comments. So when we do get to questions, super chats will be answered on YouTube, and even before that, I'll be taking whatever questions the Law of Self-Defense members have sent in on their member dashboard. Watching this video, we always give the priority to our members, as you might expect. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's hop to the news broadcast video of this event, and I'll run through it straight through so you can enjoy it as I enjoyed it, and then we'll start stepping through the kinds of legal dynamics, tactical dynamics, mistakes, arguably unnecessary risks that were taken in the course of this encounter. Okay, so let me pull up that video. Whoops. Should be right. Oh, good heavens. Okay, should be this one. Let's see. Whoops. So looking for that one, I did happen to come across a video of me shooting a Thompson submachine gun. So let me share that with all of you as well. This was that was not the right. Try this all again. All right. Good heavens. What a system we have here. Well, now, of course, I lost the fun video, but I have the video that you're all here for. So this is the home defense gone wrong video, just the news broadcast. So let's step through it all together. Let's see. If I have time at the end, perhaps then I'll share the brief video of me shooting my, not mine, definitely not mine, a borrowed Thompson submachine gun. So here's the home defense video. Home defense got wrong, and here we go. Whoops. You know what? Let me just make sure I clicked the share audio button. I have a new computer system, and sometimes it doesn't do things quite the right way. So Chrome, yep, share audio. Here we go. All right, now this should work. Let's see.
Man says he grabbed his gun and scared the group of men off. What he didn't expect is gunfire was exchanged. This all was caught on surveillance cameras. Fox 5 reporter Eric Perry is live outside the home in Clayton County. So, Eric, what happened?
Yeah, Tom, Christine, honestly, what happened, that group of men picked the wrong house code to try to burglarize here. You can see the evidence on this BMW from that shootout, just riddled with gunfire. That man said he just wanted to make sure his wife was protected.
I don't want to die at home. I survived Afghanistan and everything else, and to die at home in my own yard,
The goal for Whitfield Smith was to protect his family and home early Monday morning when he noticed a group of men on his Ring camera.
I'm noticing a young man running from my neighbor's yard across my front lawn into the middle of the street to meet up with two other gentlemen.
One of the men made a near fatal decision.
Sprints of my driveway. I can see on camera that he's hunched down, wearing a gray hoodie, and he's got some kind of firearm in his hand. He reaches to try to get into my BMW that's in the driveway. The door is locked. Grab my rifle, head outside.
With flip-flops, pajama pants, and no shirt, this veteran went to war to protect his wife who was hiding inside.
Boom, 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 boom. There was one gentleman that was on the other side of the trees, and the main protagonist was right here using my truck as a shield.
At one point, he kicked off his flip-flops, races inside, puts on clothes, and comes back out. He says he didn't have time to be afraid. Only time to act.
I didn't think that they'd be shooting at me and I'd be hearing bullets whiz past me.
This father fears he would have been dead if it wasn't for his BMW to shield the nearly 24 bullets.
They said, Mr. Smith, you're very brave. You're very brave. But you're very crazy. You're very stupid. But you're very brave.
Yeah, and Mr. Smith is alive. Thankfully, no one was injured in any of this. He says that the group of men actually got away with the firearm that he had inside of his truck there. He also says that after the gunfire really erupted, they tried to break into neighbors' homes to escape. They were unsuccessful, but they are still out there. If you know anything about this, come forward to Clayton County Police. Of course, you can remain anonymous. Scary moments here in Clayton County, but that's the latest. I'm Eric Perry, Fox 5 News.
Yeah, he made it through Afghanistan, and this happens in his own front yard. Unbelievable.
Unreal.
Eric, thanks.
Okay, so let me touch on a couple things that came up late on the end of that video so I don't forget them. First of all, do you want to survive Afghanistan to die in your driveway for no particularly good reason? I'll circle back to that. Apparently, one of his guns, the homeowner's guns, was stolen from his own truck. Folks, don't leave firearms in your vehicles, especially overnight. I mean, I get it. If you have to run to the post office or something and you're habitually carrying, as you always do, I always do, you may need to put the gun in your glove box momentarily while you're running to the post office to do whatever your business is. Still not a great idea, but that's completely different than leaving a gun in your car at night. I live in a pretty nice neighborhood, and even here, we have transients drive through the neighborhood, opening up unlocked car doors to steal stuff from the cars all the time. If there's a gun in there, now they have your gun. And there's no reason to leave it in the car in your own driveway at night. Your home is right there. Bring it inside. Secure it appropriately. And I have seen these car safes that you can cable lock someplace in the car. Folks, if you're home, just bring it inside the house. There's no reason to leave it in the car. Clearly, this gentleman didn't even have that. They, I presume, just grabbed the gun from the center console or the glove box, wherever it was stored. Just a bad idea. So what do we have here? We have this homeowner. He sees on his Ring camera some suspicious looking characters. He infers that they're up to no good, especially when he sees them run up the driveway to his BMW car. Nice car. Probably reasonably inferring that they're going to break into the car and steal some of his stuff from the car. And he runs out of his house with an AR. What's he not doing here? He's not defending his wife. He's not defending his home. There was zero evidence from which to infer that these bad actors were attempting to breach his home. He went to the fight. The fight didn't come to him. He was in his house. Now, if they had tried to come into his house, that would have been a completely different narrative. What he ran out there with an AR to defend was presumably his car, his BMW, which, by the way, didn't get so defended. Now he's got a BMW punched full of gunfire. Is that a win? And the only reason this guy is alive is luck. He had an exchange of gunfire. He put himself into a gunfight. You know what happens in gunfights? People die in gunfights. It's pure luck that those bad actors didn't get off a solid hit on him and have him bleeding out dead there in his own driveway after being a veteran who survived Afghanistan. For what? To protect his BMW? Even if it were lawful, and we're going to step through Georgia law in a moment, it's almost certainly not lawful. Even if it were lawful, is that worth it? Is that worth dying over? And the only reason he didn't kill anybody was luck. I mean, let's start with the bad actors. We saw the way he was shooting, just kind of holding the gun out. Bam, 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 bam. If he had hit one of those bad actors, now he would have had to have justified a killing under extremely questionable legal circumstances, as we'll see in a moment as we step through actual Georgia law. But folks, it wasn't just the bad actors he was endangering. This is classic reckless use of a firearm. When you're not using the sights, you're just kind of blasting away in the general direction of what you perceive to be a threat. There are other homes in that community. We saw that in the video. There's homes everywhere. There's innocent people living, working, eating, sleeping in those homes. And you're endangering every one of them with rounds from your gun because you're not firing in a disciplined, controlled, aimed fashion. It's a very definition of recklessness. Putting other innocent people in unjustified risk of death or serious bodily injury. And that's a felony charge all by itself, especially when a gun is being used. So he could be charged with that reckless endangerment completely independent of the other legal merits in this case. And if he'd killed one of these people, he could be charged with murder or manslaughter because he doesn't have a legal justification for this use of deadly defensive force. Now, he could, if he'd made better decisions, have had an extremely robust legal justification for use of force in the context of if these bad actors had decided to come into the home. If they had attempted to breach the home, Georgia law, like most states, provides very, very strong protections for homeowners defending their home against an actual unlawful, forcible intruder into the home. Very hard for defenders to screw up that scenario. They sometimes do if they do things like rush out of the home at the aggressor, not even an apparent intruder, or chase an intruder who's fleeing down the street. Then they can get into trouble because they lose all those legal presumptions that are favorable to them if they're in their home, actually defending their home against an intruder. So here is where we are. So let's take a look at some relevant Georgia law here. Use of force in defense of self or others. Let me pull this up so you can see the statute as well. See if I can expand this a little bit for you. All right, Georgia. This is Georgia's core self-defense statute, 16321. Use of force in defense of self or others. A person is justified in threatening or using force against another. Now, notice it just says force. It doesn't say deadly force here. So we're talking about these are the requirements for any degree of force to be justified. When and to the extent he reasonably believes such threat or force is necessary to defend himself or a third person. This is people, right? Defend himself or a third person against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. And then we get to the additional requirements for the use of deadly defensive force. Except a person is justified in using force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm only if they reasonably believe such force is necessary to prevent death or great bodily harm. So this is the element of proportionality of those 5 elements of self-defense. You can use deadly defensive force if you're defending against a deadly force threat against innocent persons, not property. Not property. So let's get to Georgia's defense of property statute. Now, when I say property here, I'm talking right now about mere personal property. We need to distinguish between mere personal property on the one hand and highly defensible property on the others. That's how use of force law distinguishes the degree of force that can be used in defense of property. There's least defensible property, which is things like personal items. There's highly defensible property, which are things like the home. Now, the definition, the scope of highly defensible property varies by jurisdiction. Some states, every state includes your home for sure, your dwelling. They generally also include temporary dwellings. If you're staying in a hotel room, the hotel room is your dwelling, is your home for the purpose of your stay. If you're in an RV and you're camping out in your RV, you're living in it, it becomes your home for purposes of defense of highly defensible property. If you're camping in a tent, the tent becomes your home while you're camping in it for purposes of use of force in defense of highly defensible property. A vehicle is a little more ambiguous in the sense that if you're in your vehicle, if it's an occupied vehicle, many states will recognize that occupied vehicle as highly defensible property with greater liberty to use deadly force in defense of that property. Because what's really happening there, folks, is you're not really defending the property, the highly defensible property. When the car is occupied, when you're in your home defending against an intruder, it's not literally the door handle of your car or the doorknob on the front of your door that you're defending there. The highly defensible property is acting as a surrogate for the people inside the property. Your home's acting as a surrogate for the people inside the home. In the case of an occupied vehicle, the occupied vehicle is acting as a surrogate for the human beings inside the vehicle. That's what's really being defended. And for that reason, an unoccupied vehicle, an empty car, is treated as mere personal property. Now, in the context of highly defensible property, it's common to have provisions that allow for the use of deadly force in defense of highly defensible property, even where that deadly force may not be permissible if you were just in a fight out on a public street. So you get extra protections if you're defending in the context of highly defensible property. With mere personal property, and that's what an unoccupied car is, folks, it's mere personal property. Mere personal property is non-deadly defensive force only in the absence of a threat to persons. So that includes personal items, unoccupied cars. It includes pets. I know the pet owners out there don't like to hear that, but pets for use of force law purposes are mere personal property, non-deadly force only in defense of mere personal property. The one exception, of course, being Texas. Texas is the only state that has any provision for the use of deadly force in defense of mere personal property in the absence of a threat to persons. That's Texas Penal Code 9.42. If you'd care to read that, you can find it at lawofselfdefense.com/942. We'll bring you to that statute. You'll note it has a lot of conditions, a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through. And if you miss any of them, you don't qualify for the justification. So even in Texas, I caution people against using deadly force in defense of mere personal property, like an unoccupied vehicle. But in any case, outside of Texas, the other 49 states and the District of Columbia and every other U.S. territory, deadly force in defense of mere personal property is simply not permitted, period. So here we have use of force in defense of property other than habitation. So under Georgia law, the habitation is, of course, highly defensible property. But let's do the non-highly defensible property first, the mere personal property. So use of force in defense of property other than a habitation. A person is justified in threatening or using force against another. Now, just force, not deadly force, right? So there would be additional conditions required for deadly force. Again, just like there are in the context of defense of persons, except here we never really, well, we'll see in a moment. So a person is justified in using, threatening or using force against another when he reasonably believes such threat or force is necessary to prevent or terminate the other's trespass on or tortious or criminal interference with real property, that would be land, other than a habitation. So we have a separate rule for habitation, separate rule for highly defensible property. Mere land is not highly defensible property. Because mere land, excuse me, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Mere, that didn't work so well. Mere land without any kind of improvements on it, building structures, doesn't serve that surrogate process, purpose. It's not acting as a surrogate for people being protected in something. There's nothing for the people to be protected within. So mere land is also dealt with for use of force law purposes as least defensible property, like personal property. So here we see for real property, land other than a habitation, or in the context of personal property, you can use force, but not deadly force. Force to prevent interference with such property if it's in your lawful possession, the lawful possession of a member of your immediate family, or belongs to someone whose property you have a duty to protect. So your armed guard, for example. Note the restriction here, though. Even just non-deadly force in defense of mere personal property, it doesn't apply to you using non-deadly force in defense of anybody's property. So you hear a woman screaming, "Oh my God, that guy stole my purse," and you see a dude running down the street with a woman's purse. Well, is that property in your possession? No. Is that property in the possession of a member of your immediate family? No, not if it's a stranger. So do you have any privilege to use force in defense of that property, even just non-deadly force? No. So it's not a case where even mere non-deadly force can always be used in defense of property. It depends on who's in possession of the property under Georgia law. It has to be you in possession, or one of your immediate family members in possession, or it has to be the property of somebody you have a duty to protect, whose property you have a duty to protect. So that's non-deadly force in defense of property. Then we get to the use of deadly force in defense of property. The use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm. That's the definition of deadly force. Force that can readily cause death or great bodily harm. To prevent trespass on or tortious or criminal interference with real property other than habitation or personal property is not justified. So the use of deadly force in defense of mere personal property is not justified unless the person using such force believes it's necessary to prevent a forcible felony. Well, a forcible felony is a felony involving a threat of force to persons. So what this paragraph of the statute is saying is you cannot use deadly force in defense of mere personal property in the absence of a threat to persons. And if there's a threat to persons, folks, that's a defense of persons scenario. That's not a defense of property scenario. So non-deadly force in defense of mere personal property only, and even then only sometimes. And no deadly force in defense of property unless it's a forcible felony involving a threat to persons. All right, so that's mere personal property. That's this guy's car, folks, his unoccupied BMW in his driveway. That's this. So non-deadly force only. Then we get to Georgia statute on defense of habitation. What if this guy had hunkered down in his home and they had tried to enter his home? Well, then he's in a much more advantageous position. So this is Georgia statute 16.323, use of force in defense of habitation. A person is justified in threatening or using force against another when they reasonably believe such threat or force is necessary to prevent or terminate such unlawful entry into or attack upon a habitation. Okay, did that happen here? Nope. There was no unlawful entry or attack upon this guy's habitation, which is his home, not his car. However, even then, such person is, even had there been an attack or unlawful entry into habitation, such person is justified in the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death only if the person trying to enter your home did so in a violent or tumultuous manner. So unlawful entry into your home by itself is not enough to justify deadly defensive force. It has to have been entering in a violent or tumultuous manner. Or they reasonably believe the entries attempted are made for the purpose of assaulting or offering personal violence to any person in the dwelling. But you can't just speculate this, folks. Reasonably believes means that you are applying your powers of reason to actual evidence, facts. You're making reasonable inferences from facts. So if you know the person and they've been threatening you, if they're shouting threats as they're coming in or immediately preceding their entry, sure, that's all evidence from which you could infer this purpose of assaulting or offering personal violence. But absent that, you don't have the justification. And that the use of deadly defensive force is necessary to prevent the assault or offer of personal violence. In other words, a necessity component. So these are alternative justifications for deadly force in defense of highly defensible property. So the first is it's not enough that it's just an unlawful entry. It has to have been made in a violent or tumultuous manner. Or that force is used against a person who's not a member of the family or household, presumably here, and who unlawfully and forcibly enters. So again, unlawful entry is not enough. It has to be unlawful or forcibly entering. Or the person using the defensive deadly force believes the entry is made or attempted for the purpose of committing a felony therein. But again, we don't even have an attempted entry into the habitation here. So these are all very powerful justifications for the use of deadly defensive force if any of these conditions are met. But none of these conditions are met in this particular case. Even if they, in particular, since the person was not attempting to enter. So what we have here are bad actors not apparently attempting to enter the habitation, unlawfully, forcibly, or any other way. If they were, these defensive habitations provisions would be triggered, and this homeowner would be in a highly justified position for the use of deadly defensive force. But that didn't happen here. So what did happen here? He sees that his BMW is probably going to be jacked up. I would expect this is not the first time a car has been jacked up in this community. He's aware of other instances. It's a nice car. He cares about it. He worked hard for it. And so he runs out there with his AR rifle. Now, is there a scenario under which he runs out with the rifle, not for the purpose of defending the car, but just in case he is personally subject to a deadly force attack when he goes out there? Sure, he could argue, hey, when I went out to my car, I never had any intent of shooting anybody in defense of the car. I was just preparing myself in case when I was lawfully using non-deadly force to protect my car, which would be permissible, if they responded with a deadly force attack upon me, I'd be prepared to defend myself. Is that an argument that could be made? Sure. Let's even say it was an argument that would work. What are you doing from a practical perspective? You're going to what you believe could be a gunfight, right? The only reason you're bringing the AR is in case you're subject to a deadly force response from those bad actors, presumably with guns. So you're voluntarily going to a gunfight in your shorts and your flip-flops and your AR rifle. What happens if you catch a round from one of those bad guys? Or more than one round? What happens if they decide they don't just want to shoot you, leave you laying there, hopefully to recover sometime in the future, but, you know, that's a nice AR rifle. We'd like that too. After all, they've already taken a gun from your truck that you left in there. Plus, when he goes out there and he ends up in the gunfight, he returns fire in a classic example of reckless use of a firearm. So let's go back to the video here and step through some of this video again, step by step. Let's see. Here we go. I think this is it.
Man says he grabbed his gun and scared the group of men off. What he didn't expect is gunfire was exchanged. This all was caught on surveillance cameras. Fox 5 report.
Look at that creepy guy on the right. I mean, I have no idea who that is, but man, do I get a creepy vibe off of him. Okay, never mind.
Reporter Eric Perry is live outside the home in Clayton County. So, Eric, what happened?
Yeah, Tom, Christine, honestly, what happened, that group of men picked the wrong house code to try to burglarize here.
That's absolutely true, right? I mean, regardless of what we think about the merits of the defensive force here, those bad actors, that was poor victim selection for sure. May not have been lawful defense, frankly, extremely questionable to me. But nevertheless, if you're the bad actor, that was not the outcome you wanted for sure.
You can see the evidence on this.
All right, so this is the guy's own car. So did he even effectively protect his car? I mean, it seems to me pretty likely that whatever these kids were going to do to his car, these bad actors were going to do to his car, it probably wasn't going to be full of bullet holes. Were they going to break a window to steal something from inside the car? I mean, that sucks. But man, this looks like he volunteered his car for an IDPA match someplace.
BMW from that shootout, just riddled with gunfire. That man said he just wanted to make sure his wife was protected.
Is that what he wanted to make sure? Really? because he could have done that by hunkering down inside his home, calling 911 and waiting to see if they came in or tried to come in or threatened to come in, even shook the doorknob of his front door. Right? Would that have been a more effective defense of his wife than running out in the driveway in his shorts and flip-flops with an AR? Subjecting himself to return gunfire? What if he'd been shot and killed in the driveway or shot and disabled in the driveway? What defense does his wife have then? Now the bad guys have his AR and his front door's presumably left unlocked and open behind him. I don't think he walked out his front door with an AR to confront burglars or however he perceived these bad actors and carefully locked his door behind him. Foolish, foolish, foolish. Whatever he was doing, he was not effectively, or I would argue, even subjectively defending his wife. Look at this gunfire. Look how he is manipulating this firearm. This is completely unarmed, reckless discharge of a firearm. He just has the gun held out at arm's length, parallel to his body, sending rounds, roughly in the direction of the bad actors? What's the prospect that any of those 223 rounds, pencil width size rounds, are actually going to strike any of those bad actors, as opposed to striking homes, vehicles, people throughout that community full of homes? This is he's not even close to using the sights. You'd never shoot a match this way, right? If you cared where the rounds were going to hit. And rounds don't miss, folks. Rounds continue until they hit something. And he has a far more likely prospect of hitting something other than the bad actors by discharging his firearm in this manner. Someone says it was a 300 Blackout. Doesn't matter. So what? A Sharpie diameter round? Doesn't matter. And now he comes right out of his flip-flops. Folks, don't go into a fight with flip-flops. Jeepers. Lace your damn shoes if you know you're going to a fight.
I don't want to die at home. I survived Afghanistan and everything.
All right. Well, listen, thank you for your service. He's apparently a veteran, survived Afghanistan. And I don't know if this is how he shot in Afghanistan, but if he did, he likely didn't hit anything there either. But there's stuff you can do in a war zone, folks, that you can't do on a town street in America. There's stuff you can get away with in combat under those rules of engagement that are not the same rules of engagement as are permitted to armed American citizens in the homeland. You can't just walk around a community discharging your firearm like this. You couldn't do it and not have it be reckless, even if you were being subject to deadly aggressive force, which he apparently was here.
Thing else, to die at home in my own yard.
Yeah, let's not do that. By the way, I presume this is on his property. I don't know. I mean, for all I know, in theory, the news could have seen this sign on a neighbor's property and just clipped it into the report. Who knows? But folks, for God's sakes, don't put signs like this on your property. This goes to your state of mind. No trespassing. Violators will be shot. Survivors will be shot again. You can't shoot someone for mere trespass. We just talked about that. Real property, mere open land, no use of deadly defensive force to protect real property, mere trespassing. So mere trespassing cannot defend against mere trespassing with deadly force. So you can't do the first thing. You can't shoot them. And you especially can't shoot them again just because they survived the first shooting. I mean, this is a statement to the world that you're prepared to use deadly force unlawfully. Why would you do that? Does this help you defend your home? Does it make you more accurate? Does it make you faster? Does it make you stronger? Does it make your home more secure against violent intrusion? No. Now, I know we're in the gun community. We look at these things and we laugh. It's funny. We've seen these bumper stickers and signs and posters and clips, buttons are all our lives. And we just laugh at them. But in front of a jury, if he'd killed one of these people, and by the way, for all he knows, these bad actors are 13, 14 years old, right? 13, 14-year-olds have guns, rob cars all the time. I should say steal from cars all the time. If this was not a black male homeowner, but a white male homeowner, and he'd shot a 13-year-old black boy dead for trying to steal something from his car, how do you think that would be playing in the media? And you think the media and the prosecutors would be making a big deal out of this damn sign? Yeah, they would, folks. Please do not put stuff like this. Anything that goes to a possible, that allows for the prosecutor to argue an inference of a malicious state of mind, an unlawful state of mind, please don't do it. You're just giving the prosecution leverage, stuff to talk about that you don't need to give them. You're in enough trouble already.
Right. For Whitfield Smith was to protect his family and home early Monday morning.
Oh, yeah, there's the 300 AAC. So that's a 300 blackout. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Is that, I can't tell. The Diamondback. Okay. I will note that his sights are down. Apparently he didn't need them up because he wasn't aiming anyway. But regardless, so 300 blackout. Again, they say defending his home, defending his family. He wasn't doing either of those things, folks. He would have been defending his home or his family if he stayed with his home and with his family. Instead, he went to the fight, I would suggest, in defense of his BMW car, which ended up, he ended up shooting it up a bunch himself.
When he noticed a group of men on his ring cam.
All right, there's the ring camera. Ring cameras are pretty popular. They work pretty well. We've got a few of them around my house. I will tell you that this is not my personal area of expertise, but I've informed by people who I know to be experts that these Wi-Fi cameras are not that hard to defeat. There's devices that the bad guys use that can break the connection between the Wi-Fi camera and your router, confuse that connection so they stop capturing images. So I'm told that the best setup is to have some combination of wireless and wired, if that's your thing. So just thought I'd mention that in passing.
I'm noticing a young man running from my neighbor's yard across my front lawn into the middle of the street.
Okay. Are you allowed to make an inference that something suspicious is happening from this? Sure.
To meet up with two other gentlemen.
One of the men made a near fatal decision.
Sprints of my driveway. I can see on camera that he's hunched down wearing a gray hoodie and he's got some kind of firearm.
All right. I don't really see the firearm in that image, but let's pretend it was clearly visible. The guy's got a firearm. So you know that if you go and confront him, you're in a gunfight. Over what? You know you're going to a deadly force fight if you believe he's got a gun. You're prepared to get into a gunfight over your car? You're prepared to die over an unoccupied vehicle? Leaving, by the way, your home and your wife helpless. Certainly undefended by you if you're shot and bleeding out in your driveway. So this guy knows he's going to a gunfight. And we can see the bad actors here at the car, apparently trying to get into the car, doing bad things to the car. That's not nice. People work hard for their cars, work hard for their BMWs. I get it. I wouldn't like someone breaking into my car either. But he's not trying to enter the home, folks. He's not trying to forcibly and unlawfully enter highly defensible property.
He reaches to try to get into my BMW that's in the driveway. The door's locked. Grab my rifle.
Okay. That's a nice car, folks. Looks like a 5 Series. That's a damn nice car. But look at it. And he did this to his own car. It appears to me.
Head outside.
And here he is again. Why? Even if it were legally justified, and I would suggest, as we just looked at the statutes, this is not legally justified. But even if it were, why are you doing this? It makes absolutely no sense. Remember, folks, the moment you're in that fight, you've just incurred two risks you were not incurring a moment before. The risk of dying in the fight, and he knows he's going to a gunfight. And he does it with an AR. He's not aiming, and flip-flops and shorts. Or not shorts, I guess. Flip-flops and whatever he's wearing there. Long pants of some kind.
with flip-flops,
And then he loses his flip-flops.
pajama pants,
Pajama
and no
pants.
shirt. This veteran went to war to protect his wife, who was
Okay, he went to war. It looked like war. Looked like he was going to war. Are you allowed to go to war in defense of your car? Are you allowed to act like you're in a war in a highly populated community with homes everywhere? Just spraying 300 blackout rounds around your community? No, folks, you're not allowed to do that. And again, they keep saying in defense of his wife. His wife was inside the house. He's not inside the house.
hiding inside.
Boom, 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 boom. There was one gentleman that was on the other side of the trees, and the main protagonist was right here using my truck as a shield.
Okay. So now he knows he's got two bad actors at least. So there's a disparity of numbers. That's not a winning formula for success in a fight. Now he's shooting up his own truck, presumably, as well as his BMW. And that's where the bad guy gets a gun, is from this homeowner's truck.
At one point, he kicked off his flip-flops, races inside, puts on clothes, and comes back out.
Why? Why come back out? You think anybody might have called the police? You think the police might be arriving on the scene, hearing about gunfire, looking for a man with a gun? You think they might see you in the dark walking around with a gun and shoot you? It happens all the time, folks. So however defective his initial decision to go out there with a gun in the first place, and I would suggest it's highly defective, it's even worse now. Now he's setting himself up to be shot by responding officers.
He says he didn't have time to be afraid. Only time to act.
I didn't think that they'd be shooting at me, and
He didn't think they'd be shooting at him, but he says he recognized a gun in their hand on his Ring camera. Is that a reasonable belief, that he didn't think they'd be shooting at him if he went out there with a gun himself? I mean, maybe he genuinely did believe that, but I would suggest it's not a reasonable
hearing
belief.
bullets whiz past me.
This father fears he would
So bullets are whizzing past him. So he's risking death. Over what?
have been dead if it wasn't for his BMW to shield the nearly 24 bullets.
They said, Mr. Smith, you're very brave. You're very brave. But you're very crazy. You're very stupid.
I would concur with that. I don't see anything worth here worth dying over or worth killing over.
But you're very brave.
Yeah, and Mr. Smith is alive. Thankfully, no one was injured in any of this. He says that the group of men actually.
Thank God nobody was injured. Not Mr. Smith, the homeowner, not the bad actors, not because I particularly care about them, but because it would have created tremendous legal liability for the homeowner, but also not any of his neighbors, not any children in the community were killed, because that's pure luck that didn't happen.
Actually got away with the firearm that he had inside of his truck there. He also says that after the gunfire really erupted, they tried to break into neighbors' homes to escape. They were unsuccessful, but they are still out there.
So, if they tried to break into a neighbor's home to escape, that would have been an unlawful forcible entry into the neighbor's home. And the neighbor would have had a highly defensible position, justified position to use deadly defensive force against them.
Anything about this, come forward to Clayton County Police. Of course,
look at all the homes. This is just a residential community. A 300 blackout round's going to do a pretty good job plowing through some of those homes.
Can remain anonymous. Scary moments here in Clayton County, but that's the latest. I'm Eric Perry, Fox 5 News.
Yeah, he made it through Afghanistan, and this happens in his own front yard. Unbelievable.
Unreal.
Eric, thanks.
So you'd think someone who made it through Afghanistan would have sufficient introspection to know they don't want to die in their driveway and voluntarily get into a gunfight and then conduct themselves in this manner. This was in Georgia, folks, Clayton County, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. So bad tactics, bad legal practices. Now, is this person arrested? Is this person going to be charged, convicted, sentenced to prison? Maybe not. I mean, that'll be a political decision made by the local prosecutor, made by the local police in terms of an initial arrest. They may not do any of those things. He may get a lucky break. But if they wanted to arrest him, even if only on the charge of reckless endangerment, felony reckless endangerment. They've got plenty of evidence from which to do that. This was not aimed fire from that AR platform. They've got plenty of evidence for felony recklessness with a firearm, reckless endangerment with a firearm here. They certainly could arrest him and charge him, and he could be prosecuted on a felony charge and convicted, lose all his gun rights forever, perhaps spend years in prison. If that doesn't happen, it's not because it couldn't happen. It's because they decided to give him a break. But that's not up to him. That's not within his control. That's within the control of other people whose own interests may not be aligned with his interests. Now, again, just imagine if this was a white homeowner and the bad actors were 13-year-old young black men, young black boys at 13 years of age, and he'd shot and killed one of them. How do you think this would be playing out in the media? You don't think Benjamin Crump would be there? Al Sharpton would be there? You don't think this would be another Ahmaud Arbery case in Georgia? You don't think they'd be shouting, "We're seeing it again"? You don't think there'd be a year and a half of pollution of the jury pool in this community, of the bringing in of prosecutors from outside the judicial district just to make sure they were sufficiently aggressive in bringing this case? The bringing in of a judge from outside the district when every judge in that community recuses themselves? All that would happen, folks. So never defend yourself with the expectation that you'll be getting the lucky break that this particular guy might get. And don't learn your self-defense law from anecdotes. Don't conclude because this guy might not be arrested, charged, prosecuted, convicted, that means what he did was lawful. That's not what it means. It means he got a lucky break. And you can't count on getting a lucky break. You want to not be in a position where your conduct is defensible only if you get lucky breaks. You want your conduct in self-defense, defense of your family, defense of your property to be defensible even if they throw the book at you. That's the most secure position to be in. And this guy made himself extremely vulnerable to successful prosecution and conviction on a felony charge here. All right, let me take a, let's see, a quick look through. Oh, I had promised a little video. So a few years ago, periodically I speak at the, most of you probably know this, periodically I speak at the FBI Academy down in Quantico, normally on these kinds of highly politically energized cases, use of force cases. And a few years ago when I was there, they were kind enough to bring me out to their range, which is, as you might imagine, right there at the Academy. And they pulled a few Thompson machine guns out of the armory, a bunch of other different guns too. These were Thompsons from the Prohibition era. That's what's in the FBI armory. They're full auto, and they brought it out with a tray on wheels full of loaded mags. No drum mags, unfortunately. They said they're too much of a pain in the butt to load, but a lot of just straight mags. And I got to do a little Thompson submachine gun fire there at the FBI Academy. So that's what this video is. It's only about half a minute long. So here's me shooting my Thompson, not my Thompson, their Thompson, the FBI's Thompson, at their shooting range. Whoops. Sorry, folks. It looped up there. So it was, as you might imagine, it was great fun. I was pleased to see my recoil control getting better over time. It really is a good push from that Thompson, even though it's quite heavy. But yes, it would be wonderful if we could finally do away with some of this NFA nonsense and just have fully automatic Thompsons generally available. I can assure you I'd be at the front of the line to get one. It was it accurate? It was more than accurate for serious social purposes. Yes. All right, so let me see if we have any. First, I'll look at the law of self-defense member comments. Let's see. Thank you, law of self-defense members, for signing in on your dashboard to watch this. I really appreciate that here. Joe DiMartino says he's lucky one of his shots didn't hit a neighbor's house. He could have killed a kid asleep in bed. Yes, absolutely. Imagine that. Your kid's killed by a neighbor's errant round fired recklessly down the street from his 300 blackout AR because he was defending his car that he ended up shooting up himself. Jesus. BMW owners really love their cars. Yeah, I don't know. I've yet to have a BMW car. Of course, my motorcycles are all BMW. They stole a gun out of the car. Yeah, again, I mean, I don't know. That doesn't elicit any sympathy from me. Why is there a gun in his car overnight? Again, I don't get it. I think his knowledge of the gun in the car just makes it worse, frankly. I mean, he says he saw a gun in their hand the moment they ran up the driveway. So they already had a gun. He's already knows he's going to a gunfight. But even if you just know they're rummaging in your car and you left a gun in your car and that's how they're going to arm themselves with the gun, why are you going to a gunfight then? I mean, listen, you screwed up. You're going to lose the gun. That's on you for leaving it there. Joe DiMartino, again, given the way he handled that AR, I'm wondering what he did in Afghanistan. Cook, company clerk, motor pool. You know, I've never served, folks, so I hate to second guess our veterans. I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who served in combat units, often higher tier combat units, but none of them shoot like this. That is crazy. All right, so that's really all the law of self-defense member comments. Let me pull up the super chats. However many of those we got. Again, folks, if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please, if you see that subscribe button on YouTube and it is red, please smash it until it is no longer red, until it's gray. Hit that bell button to get some notifications. Click the thumbs up button, the like button, and please put a comment in, even if it's just your city and state. That helps fool the algorithm into sharing our content more broadly. Let's see. Evil Bunny, $10, $50 rather, at the start. I already mentioned that. Fury Red Podcast, $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Writes, God bless Branca. Even though we don't always agree, I appreciate your wisdom and advice in self-defense. Thank you also in the past for addressing my non-super chat comments. Well, you're very, very welcome. Fury Red Podcast. Delio Turk, $4.99 super chat. Thank you. On this topic of personal property, where does livestock fall on the scale? That's a great question. I get that one all the time. Livestock and service animals. Are they treated any differently than pets for use of force purposes? And the answer is no, at least not to my knowledge. Now, I've looked and looked and looked for laws that would allow for some heightened privilege to use defensive force beyond non-deadly force in defense of livestock and service animals, and I have never been able to find any. And I've looked pretty darn hard. Now, you know, statute books are thick, and there's 50 states, and there's DC, and is it possible there's one out there that I've never seen in 30 years of doing this? I suppose. If you have it, send it to me, and I will correct my knowledge. But I've never seen any statutory provision that allows for the use of deadly defensive force in defense of livestock or service animals any differently than in defense of any other mere personal property. Sorry about that. JC Adult 101, $5 super chat. But if the guy shot at the homeowners first, was he within his rights to go out with a firearm, right to shoot if shot at first? Once you go out there with the gun, and as I mentioned earlier, is there a narrative he could tell about, well, I never intended to shoot anybody. I just had the gun with me in case I had to defend myself. The problem is he knew they had a gun. He knew he was going to a deadly force confrontation. So it's not like you saw a flashlight around your car and you thought, oh, maybe somebody's lost and but I'll bring a gun just in case. He knows he's going to a deadly force confrontation. Could it still be justified going out there with a gun? The trouble is now it allows for a reasonable inference that you didn't go out there with the gun just in case you had to defend yourself. Reasonable people are likely to infer that you went out there with the gun to defend your car. And that's not lawful. So even if you genuinely were not intending to use deadly force in defense of your car, a jury could easily conclude otherwise and convict you and sentence you to prison for the rest of your life if you ended up killing that other person, that bad actor, in what they believe is an unjustified fashion. Is that worth it? Going to live in a cage for the rest of your life without possibility of early release because the jury didn't buy your narrative that you didn't really mean to have to shoot anybody. You were just in case. What's to keep the jury from concluding that you're lying, that they believe the prosecution when the prosecution says, listen, no reasonable person would have gone out there knowing that other person had a gun unless they were prepared to get into a gunfight right then. Tony K, pretty similar case in Minnesota. He's got a link, but I can't just open links in live chats, folks. Sorry, because I never know what they are. And I don't have any kind of, 5-second delay or anything like that. I will take a look at your link after the show, though, Tony. Jefferson C. Post, the retreat to safety and then re-engagement with the threat seems like a nice cap for legally poor choices. Yeah. I mean, he went back in the house and then he came back out again. Bad for lots of reasons. One is, it's no longer a simple mistake of judgment. He's done it twice. Second of all, he sets himself up to be shot by the cops when they show up. That happens all the time, folks. Happens all the time. Cops shoot each other. Cops unintentionally shoot the law-abiding person because they're reasonably perceived as being the bad actor with the gun. Don't be walking around with a gun when cops are expected to arrive on the scene. And if you've just had an exchange of gunfire in a densely populated community, guess who's likely to show up shortly? Bad, bad, bad decision-making here. Very, very lucky guy. And I'm glad it didn't go any worse for him. Let's see. JC Adults. I was asking for more for the comments in chat. Okay. MR says, thanks for eliminating South Dakota from my bar study list. I'm not sure I understand that, but thank you very much for the $1.99 super chat, MR. That is greatly appreciated. Here on the screen, I am Krista. $10 super chat. Thank you very much. Asks, how does it affect your ability to argue self-defense if you flee the scene after a use of force? Well, flight from the scene for purposes of safety is fine. Don't stay in a place that's dangerous. If you're in a dangerous place, get yourself to a place of safety. Once you're in a position of safety, however, then the normal rules apply. And self-defense is inherently a defense of confession and avoidance. You're not saying it wasn't me. You're saying it was me. I shot that guy. But you're avoiding or seeking to avoid legal liability on the grounds of justification. I shot that guy in lawful self-defense. To the extent that you present as someone who does not subjectively believe they were acting in lawful self-defense, then why should anybody else believe you were acting in lawful self-defense? And flight from the scene for purposes other than safety is classic consciousness of guilt evidence. Now, consciousness of guilt evidence is evidence that the jury is told they're allowed to infer from that evidence that not only does the prosecution think you're guilty, but you think you're guilty. Flight from the scene, lying to police, tampering with evidence, intimidating witnesses. This is all evidence that the jury is told if you believe those facts have been proven by the state beyond a reasonable doubt, you are allowed to infer that not only does the state believe this defendant is guilty, the defendant by his own conduct believes he's guilty. And flight from the scene is a classic example of consciousness of guilt evidence. So, I mean, I don't tell people what to do. If you want to flee the scene, that's up to you. I just try to help people make informed decisions. And that's one of the implications of fleeing this scene for purposes other than safety or beyond purposes of safety. All right, folks, I think that's about all I have for all of you at the moment today. It is Friday, July 15th. I wish all of you a very, very happy and safe weekend. I will remind all of you that today's show was sponsored by no other than Law of Self-Defense itself. We have a series of 100% free webinars, roughly 2-hour webinars, where we teach you how to be hard to convict in use of force cases. They're free, but you do have to sign up because there's limited seats for each webinar. You can sign up at hardtoconvict.com, and we have a whole bunch of dates that you can choose from and become hard to convict, folks, because as we say here at Law of Self-Defense, if you carry a gun so you're hard to kill, that's why I carry a gun, so I'm hard to kill, so my family is hard to kill, then you also owe it to yourself to make sure that you know the law so you're hard to convict. You can do all of that at lawofselfdefense.com and take that Hard to Convict webinar at hardtoconvict.com. All right, folks, until we meet next time, I remain Attorney Andrew Branca for Law of Self-Defense. Whoops. I always forget to pull up our little exit video here. Until we meet again, I remain Attorney Andrew Branca at Law of Self-Defense. Stay safe.